getting back to you with this. Um, let me go ahead and do this really quickly for you. Try not to make it as long as all the other ones. So let's see here. What you got? What you got? Let's start with the daily. All right. Let's see here. Let's see what you said. You said, can the circle part be used as a breaker? Maybe that was the second one. This you just said daily. Okay, so I just wanted to know if this is correct. Um, so from what I see right here, not so much. You don't want to really do this until after you actually get the formation of your supply, because then it's like you got a supply and the demand. So, which is essentially this is a demand zone, but because you had this internal break or breaker structure or whatever you want to call it right there, I think I would say internal break because for me this is my swing high. We are in the supply zone. So, and then remember last video I said how the range of price is really shrinking. So it could either explode to the top or explode to the bottom, whichever side it chooses. But it's in this supply zone, and as it was coming up, it was losing momentum. Normally, that means that price is going to go the opposite way. Sometimes, if but price could still, even though it's currently where it's at right now, um, it could still come up from here, right? Because for and have I forgot to take a screenshot and post it in my channel, but I had predicted these sales to continue um, at the beginning of the week. I just haven't been trading, so I haven't been posting in the chat or nothing, or in my chat, in my server or whatnot. But price could buy it from here. It could buy from here and continue going higher, and I'll show you why. But to me, this is liquidity, or if you want to go from here, it's liquidity. So you have this imbalance right here. So price come and fill the imbalance and continue higher. Because overall, we are overall bullish, right? Because let me move this. Because this was the last like true breaker structure, right? So this was your swing low, and then you had this internal break. So you had internal low, another internal break, but you never really had like a deep pullback like this one. So these would not qualify for like a full breaker structure, right? And that's why I said over here, I would count this as internal break. This was a pretty decent pullback, but however, our swing high is still swing high, swing low, and then we never broke this low. So this high is overall weak. Overall, so I do see that price can come down to this lower demand zone and continue buying. That's my expectations, but that's a pretty deep pullback, which would be decent, right? Because then break a structure, and then you have your new swing low, and then internal low. So you probably have price come back in here, continue the trend, or we could just continue selling, right? And we could come down here, react off this supply zone or this breaker area or whatever. But yeah, that was my expectations, and then that was based off also 4 hour can buy from here, right? Let me fix this real quick. So for my 4 hour, I'm looking at right this. Let me get the little, and I'll turn off the magnet so it's not so hard. So you had this breaker structure here, so that means swing low, and then your before you had the first deep pullback, this was the high that was created, right? So swing low, swing high, and then you had a breaker structure right here. So technically, this is like a breaker structure on the 4 hour to the downside. But however, well, no, 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 no. Well, yes, 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 yes. Because if this is a breaker structure, this became your new swing low because this was your pullback, and then breaker structure. But however, we had this breaker structure here, and we are reacting off this unmitigated demand zone. So we could at least see price um, pull back into like turn my thing off into like this breaker uh, into like this supply, right? Or you can use the entire area, right? So one of those two, um, or you could just use this overall order block up here because it was never mitigated. So price could continue a bit higher, or it could come and fill this imbalance right there, and then come up and then continue back to the downside or whatever. But I'm rambling and going on too much about what you didn't ask about. So let me go back to your stuff, so this doesn't become very long. But so this is unless this is from a lower time frame, I wouldn't say that's a choke, and I would not say that this is a choke, because this is like low. It would have had to break this high and then break this low, like right here. It would have. Let me clean this up. So for this to have been a choke, it would have had to high, low, high, and then low. So it would have had to break this low after breaking this high first. But with this high not being broken in between this high, low, high, um, this is just like a. Let me see if it even closed below. It didn't. So it's really just a liquidity sweep from right here. I mean, from right here, relatively equal lows, liquidity sweep, and then the weak high was taken. Right. So or the weak high right here was taken because you had the uh, because you had a high, a low, and then a high. Price failed to break this high right there. Um, oh wait. Yep. Price failed to break this high, so this low was weak. Price came and took out the weak low. Price failed to close below this low. So ah, let me see how the easiest way to keep this clean so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay. So high, low, high, low. So this is what happened in this area, right? So price failed to break, take out this high. This low was weak. Price failed to close below that low. This high was weak. Price came up, took out this high. So this low is technically strong. It's not a weak low because we took out this overall high and closed above as well. So if we break this, then that just gives more bearish confirmation because this was a strong low. Um, but there is liquidity below, so price could wick down and then shoot up if there's like news or something. Um, but we'll just have to see, right? We don't predict. We just react based off of what our analysis is telling us. But yeah, internal liquidity sweep rather I would say because we did not close below, so you had these relatively equal lows there. So I would say liquidity sweep, and then we took out the weak high, took out the weak high because let me do this again. You had a high, low, high, right? Price closed above this high, so this low was strong. Um, Price came back down, felt to take out the low that created it right there, right? So now this high was weak. So this overall weak daily high inside of a daily strong demand because we broke this high, you can expect to look for buys. And that's kind of how you use your POIs and break down the structure and stuff. to build your expectations on what to see on the lower time frame. But like if you coming back into this demand zone, this is a lot of selling that that it took to get back in here on the daily, right? So you have to keep that in mind as well when you're trading with your higher time frame POIs and understand the distance that it takes to get there, right? So let me get off of the daily and look at the next one. Not much to look at there. All right, copy, paste. All right, so let's see here. This is a 4 hour. Let me close this shit so we got some more space. All right, so you're very zoomed in with your time frames, but so you ask, can the circle part be used as a breaker? Uh, so that's not how breakers necessarily work, right? So a breaker is a failed supplier demand zone. So say this was your demand, right? Say that's your demand. Price just blows right through it. It just keeps going, right? And now you have your supply, right? Your supply right there, and then you have another supply right here because this was a pullback. So you have two potential zones that price can sell from. It could come back up here, but it kind of never really tapped into this higher zone. Only if you use like a range of order blocks, then you could say that's mitigated already, right? So now this is how you eliminate this top one because you're like, okay, let me. What the fuck? So you eliminate that top one, right? And now you're only like, okay, so I have my. Let me do that. Adjust that a little bit. So you're like, okay, so now I have my breaker, and then I have my supply zone, right? My discount and my extreme in this case because your higher extreme supply is already mitigated. So now the next lowest one would be the one you're the one that you would want to look for sales from if you weren't targeting sales from the this breaker here, right? So um, yeah, so a breaker would be just that failed supply demand type of stuff, and you should use this indicator. It'll help a lot with identifying your pullbacks and stuff like that. This I IBSV2. I think I've sent it to you before, but it's really good. I've been using it for a long time, and it helps with change of characters and all that kind of stuff because it helps you point out the pullbacks and price action. So, like for instance, all of those candles are the gold candles. It's more better on like the lower time frames and stuff. Like, let me show you on the 1 hour, so you can see all the orange candles or the gold ones or whatever right here. So you see how these were pullbacks. So technically, you could use this as a supply zone when price comes back in there, which you can see it did right there. Let me turn this magnet back on because that's irritating me that I can't make those pretty perfect. But you can see how here price made a low and then a high and then a low. So you had an internal break right here or overall internal break right there. And then price came back and tapped into the zone and continued selling. So it kind of helps. And then the same thing here. Uh, you know, it helps. I like using it. I don't trade without using it. So I do like using it a lot. So you can see like how here over here, right? Price made a low, a high, and a low, right? And then we came up here, and then we took out this high, and we closed above, right? So that gave us a internal breaker structure, right? So it to continue the bullish trend. So like here, we never got a change of character on this time frame until about either here, right, because you had this minor pullback, or I would say either here, right, because you took out those highs, or it would be here, right. It just depends on preference, I think, at that point. But at this point, I'm saying like this is a full internal breaker structure because the swing high is literally right there, right? So which gave you the full breaker structure. But I really like using this indicator. It helps a lot. All right, so back to your stuff. But yeah, so this would be a no. The only way you could use this as a breaker is if price went higher and then it would come back and then use this failed supply as a breaker. Then yes. But to use it as a breaker as prices going down, no, that's going to be your normal ass supply zone. But if we broke this high, then yes, you can use that as a breaker because it's a failed supplier demand. Or like if you support and resistance, like this is an area of resistance up here because price rejected, right? So if price um, breaks this area of resistance, then ideally it will become an area of support, and that's basically the breaker analogy for like if you use not the not smart money concepts, it's the retail concepts, right? But it's all the same shit. It's a breaker, supply demand flip, or support resistance flip, because this was resistance because it pushed price down. Price breaks through. Now it becomes support. Price comes back to the support area that was resistance, and then continue the trend. So that's why this would be a breaker. Once price closed below this, then you could use this area as a breaker to come back into and then continue selling. But you also have the supply here, some imbalance and stuff. So using this as a breaker is kind of unless you use the entire range that includes this imbalance, then that would make it a very strong breaker because a breaker plus imbalance of the opposite side is a very strong area. So like if you use this entire area where you also include this imbalance here, right? So you can see price break this low and then come back up into this imbalance slash breaker and then continue lower, right? And that's like price expectations on how the price moves and stuff like that. All right, so let's go back and go to the next one. That's the 4 hour. I don't see any relevant demand zones. Can you point them out? If so, and also can that line count as a choke? Uh, yeah, Nez answered that one already, so you already know that's a fact about the choke. Any relevant demand zones? The reason why you don't see any relevant ones is because you are way too zoomed in, right? So if you look at my 4 hour, I have this is how I've decided to break down the 4 hour that's current, right? So I haven't updated this in forever either, and it was up here, but this would have been a relevant demand zone at the time, and you see how you did get a reaction, pretty decent reaction, might I add. That was about from this low to this high, about 155 points, which is a very good move to catch if you were to catch that. So that's I would say that that was a significant demand zone right there, and then you also have another demand zone right here. Where you had that minor pullback, and you see how price kind of struggled to break through. It did pull back from this low to this high, which was about 130 points. Not too shabby, not too shabby, right? That's a pretty decent reaction. It just failed. So it just failed to do its job. It didn't continue higher. It didn't push higher. Same thing with this one, um, right there, right? It didn't. It failed to do its job. It pushed up, but not high enough, right? And then yeah, change your character. So then you'll be looking for supply. This is also a supply right here. This weak supply, right? And then yeah. So then you have that, and then as far as anything else, it would be all the way down here. So that's why I say you're way too zoomed in for any relevant demand zones because based off of price action, this was their breaker structure, like I had explained a few minutes ago, right? And this is like extreme demand zone, and this is where I've been waiting for price to get back into for a while. I didn't expect it to come back down here and then buy up and then come back down, but I can see price coming, continuing higher from here, and then we'll just kind of form a little, maybe come back down here, you know, and then just continue higher. But it just depends. Price could 100%, you know, and the next day or two, right? So we don't know. We just gotta kind of go off of what price is doing. Right now, we did close below this low. So to me, this is like this is what it will look like current, right? So this will be a break structure to the upside, right? And then you had this change of character, right? And then maybe one day I'll just go through and do a top down um, and explain. Oh, that's wrong. Explain my reasoning for how I mark and what I see. Um, that might help. I might do that one day. And then, so that would have meant that this was my fuck wrong place. So this would have been my swing low after breaking this high. So this would be a breaking structure currently to the downside, right? Um, so 4 hours bearish. So we look for bearish continuations. But however, we need a pullback to continue after this sell off. And we're in a valid demand zone that broke the high, right? So it's a strong demand. So it could be strong enough to push back into this imbalance and sell, or push back into this wick supply and continue selling, or push back into this overall supply here and continue. So I would look for bearish continuation. But however, this is the 4 hours. So on lower time frames, I would expect for price to be buying to get into something to continue the bearish trend if we are going to do that. Which the daily and the 4 hour are telling me so. So I would continue looking for some sales because you can also see that there is more imbalance and stuff lower. And I kind of just sometimes I do this. It might not be proper structure, right? This might not be a breaker structure, and that might not be a breaker structure. But it helps me to keep track of what price is bullish or bearish because if I say, okay, this is my most recent breaker structure, this is my most recent swing low. If we break this high, I know to um, look for sales to come back into something that was in my original zone, right? So I know that once we get into like whenever we create a supply and make a pullback, I could look for buys back into those areas to target sales to get me back into my extreme area on my higher time frame, um, and then look for buys again until buys fail and I see price flip back bearish. Then I'll look for sales again. I'll just that's how I follow structure as opposed to being like, okay, so technically on the 4 hour, uh, swing high, swing low, right? So everything in between here is just internal price action, breaker structure. So 4 hours overall bearish, right? If you zoom out, oh no, no. Breaker structure, swing low, swing high, internal break, internal break, change of character right there, right? Became bearish, price sell, internal break, internal break, internal break, internal break, internal break, and then you just keep following. Price sold off some more, internal break, right? We came back into the zone, into some, demand or whatever, internal break, continue higher. So you can look for something deeper, right? To be honest, and then continue higher, internal break, because you can come back into this overall zone down there. But that's if you zooming out super far. It's long term projection type shit because technically you're looking at your daily chart if you zoom out like this. If you can see what I'm talking about. So if you look at the daily and then you zoom out and look at the 4 hour, it's the same thing. It's just more candles, but it's still giving you the same structure, right? That I just pointed that I have annotated on the daily, right? But so that's why we can come deeper into like this zone here, right there was fucking high, something like down here because you have this nice imbalance to fill, and price does a pretty decent job of filling imbalances. So like you can see here, price left this huge imbalance back here, and eventually we came back and we have filled this imbalance completely, damn near. Like that was a full imbalance fill, pretty much, right? And price does that, so it's not outside the expectations of price to come all the way down here and then continue higher. It's very likely that it could happen, right? Which would align with what I see on the 4 hours. So I'm a little bit more biased on continue to look for sales until we get into, take out these lows at least. This liquidity maybe come and sweep below here back into this imbalance on the daily, which is the same as that imbalance on the 4 hours. So everything kind of makes sense to me on that aspect, right? So let's look at what you got next. Um, Same question here. Let's see your 1 hour copy and pasta. Let me see. Let me see. Let me see. Let me see. Um, let's see here. You said same question here. So no, those would still be your supply zones and shit. Uh, I think you got breakers confused. Breakers are just the opposite of what it would be. So it would do the opposite of what it's supposed to do. Like if price breaks through a demand zone, then it becomes basically a supply zone, right? And then if price breaks through a supply zone, then it becomes a demand zone. That's like the easiest way to think of a breaker, I think. So if a demand zone fails to do its job, then it turns and does the opposite of its job and push price away when it comes back into it after it goes through. And then the same thing with the supply. You have your supply zone, right? It fails to do its job. Now it's going to do the opposite of its job. And that's what a breaker is essentially. But there's the stronger breakers are something that actually broke some kind of structure or some kind of structure, right? Or rather, some kind of structure. So, if this demand fails, then by all means, you can use that as a breaker when it comes down, breaks that low, come back into this area right here, right, and then continue selling. That will be your breaker because it did break an overall high. So it broke a significant high, and that's kind of the name where it gets its name, breaker, because it broke a high or it broke a high, but then it failed to do its job when price came back in. So it was weak. Now it's going to do the opposite of its job. Price sell, come back in, and then continue selling. So that would be the breaker. 1 hour breaker structure. Let me look at fuck. Look at the 1 hour. For me, that would not be breaker structure on the 1 hour. Well, actually, yes, yes. I just haven't updated my charts in the last week. But yeah, or or so. I guess the last week we didn't close above this high, so I was looking for sales to continue, but whatever. Yeah, I would say that was a break of structure on the 1 hour. Oh wait, your this was your no. This is not a break of structure on the 1 hour. It would be down here because you had high, low, high essentially. So you're looking at this. That's your break of structure. Your This is where you put your break of structure right here. This is just internal break of structure, right? On the 1 hour at least. We go back to the daily. See what else you had on here. Yeah. So that would be internal break of structure. This is internal break of structure right here, not a break of structure. If this was a break of structure, right, then yes, that would be a break of structure to the downside. But this was only internal break of structure, so this would be internal break of structure. You had like a change of character right here, um, right there, right. So then you had a supply zone that price was reacting off of there, right. Let me fix that a little bit. So you had your supply zone that price sold off of, and then you had a internal break structure right there, right, and then you had internal break structure right here, but you also had a fractal, like a fractal break structure right there, which gave you this supply zone right here because you had this minor pullback in there, and which is why price kept selling from there. So it was like discount and I would say like right there extreme or extreme if you want to use just that, but I would include this wick high as well. So discount and extreme of your supplies. So you can see price came back into the discount and continue selling, right? Because if you want to use this candle, you can see how price came in and mitigated that. So you could eliminate this supply and only say that you only have interest in selling in this supply because this area has been mitigated up already, right? Um, but yeah, all right. So then let's look at your what else you got? BRB for the rest. Okay, I'll be right back. I'm just kidding. All right. So copy image, pasta. Let me close this shit so I have a little bit more room. Okay, so I'm going to say price will continue to trend downward. Really, I just don't know if my supply and demand zones is marked. Were I marked were valid. What's this? M15. Okay. What do I want to say here? Um. So it's just something about how you set this. I'm going to say price will continue the trend downward. Really, I just don't know if my supply or demand zones were marked. I marked were valid. Um. So as far as um, how do I answer this? So I would say uh no. Yes for the demand, kind of ish, but no for supply. If this is your supply zone right here, then hell no, that's not supply. It hasn't even created any kind of high, low, high or anything. It didn't break this bullish excessive candle or anything. So like It's more so just imbalance fill, and price can continue higher off of that. I don't know what the fuck price did, to be honest. I haven't looked at the charts for real all week. Um, but you could kind of see how you have this like. Let me just use the line. So you can see how you have like this internal break structure right there, right? And then we came and swept this hard. So that's like change of character technically on the M15. So this is your demand zone right there, which I would look for buys to facilitate price to come back into my supply zone. You could use either this candle or this entire range, right? So you would look for price to buy back into supply where you have this gap. Ah, it fucked me up. So where you have this gap, this is a what's it called? A volume imbalance. Um, and that's ICT or whatever, but it's a volume imbalance. A little bit different from a regular one. Like a regular imbalance would just be like, a volume imbalance is more so when there is like nothing in between. So like the wicks don't uh touch each other, or the wicks. I think it's like wicks, but no body. Right. So like imbalance normally is just candle body that you're looking for imbalance. But when there's like a legit gap in price, that's more of what is referred to as a volume imbalance. But you can still use the same thing 100%. So yeah, that would be my expectations looking at this right here. I don't know what price did. So I assume it came back somewhere up here and then continued selling. So yes, in some aspect you are correct. But however, I would first look for buys to facilitate getting back into a supply zone to target sales, as opposed to saying that I'm looking for price to continue selling. I always expect some kind of pullback, especially if I get a change of character, right? So I'm this is a valid demand zone, and the next valid supply is a bit higher, right? At least right here on F15. Let me go see what it did actually. What is this? ES or NQ? Okay, okay. So I am looking at NQ. Um, when did you chart this? When was this? When was this? Okay, it looks like this area. Surprised did it just keep falling or whatever. Mm, yeah. I mean, it wouldn't have matched my expectations, so I would have been wrong, to be honest. Because of what price did, like failed to close below. Well, it did close below, but I would at least expect some kind of pullback into like this supply right here, or this supply right here. You know, right. The overall supply area, I would have expected price to continue to something up here and then come back down. But then you can see how it did not do that. So that demand that was here uh, failed to do its job right, and you can see how it became a breaker right there. So that kind of gives you a good show of the how a breaker works. As opposed to just saying a supply demand that fails does the opposite of what it does. But this is like true live example of recent price action that you were charting that is valid, because this was a valid demand because you did get a change of character right there, right? Because you had internal breaker structure, and then we swept this high, so that's like a change of character on F15, right? So you had this demand zone that was formed that was valid for creating this change of character, but price failed to do its job, which is why it was pretty weak to break it. Why it was like struggling, trying to buy, trying to buy, trying to buy, but it was just failing, right? Um, and normally I would just stay away from this kind of price action until we get some actual structure that's I see a nice reaction on the lower time frame to give me what I want to see or whatever. Because you can see how you had a low, a high, and a low. Right, price came back up, took out these highs, created this demand zone right here. Right, price came back up, and it took out these highs, and it used this breaker right here because price made a low, a high, and a low. Right, so we had internal breaker structure right there. Right, so we took out this high, so internal breaker structure right there. Overall, that would have been our overall internal break. This is more like fractal. This first internal break I annotated, right? So that's like a fractal break on F15. This is internal break on F15, right? So you can see how price came back. It broke that high, and then it used the supply zone that was created that pushed price back into this demand to facilitate the move higher. So that's another opposite, you know, show of a breaker right there. Right. So you had a breaker there and a breaker there that did its job. Right. It failed to do its original job, and then it did the opposite. It failed to do its original job by pushing price up, and then price came back into it, and it did the opposite up, and it did the opposite. Right. All right. Let's. I think that's all you had on here. Oh wait, there's one more. I'm not finished. Oh, wait, let me get rid of this stuff so I don't fuck my charts up. Because I will be back on these charts next week. Oh, nice. You can see how we're getting a nice little reaction off this 4 hour demand zone here. So you can expect price to either continue higher. What the fuck is going on? So you can expect price to either continue higher and take out that high, or just continue higher into like some supply zone or some shit, and then continue lower into like this area down here or whatever. All right, and then last one. So hopefully I'll still be able to send this, and I need to post it on YouTube. All right, let's make it quick. Um, mm, so so this is why I say that you don't want to make your demand zones and your supply zones before it actually breaks anything, because nothing made this a valid demand. It didn't take out any highs or anything. It is forming liquidity here. Um, so price could have came up, swept, tapped into like the supply, and then fucking dumped. But this is M5, so that's within this means, right? Because we failed to take out this low. This high is weak because I don't know what price did, but I think this is the same place, so price just kept selling, right? As the N15 that we just looked at. So yeah, I mean, supply zone right there, and the higher supply zone, yeah, that you marked, um, was already mitigated. So you eliminate that. So that's saying like my only valid supply is right there technically. This can be a supply zone because it's like a consolidation, can be used as like supplier demand. But I wouldn't really use this area because of these relatively equal highs. So I would expect price to come sweep these highs out and then continue selling. So I wouldn't buy. I mean, I wouldn't sell in this area. I would more so be looking for buys if possible. But I would like wait for some kind of internal structure to flip bullish again to target buys to take out liquidity and target supply, or just wait for it to happen and then target sales once we get back into a supply that I feel is a valid zone because this can be actually the supply right here. Like this will be like your supply right there. Because you can see how price made a low, a high, and then a low. So you can see how we made like a minor pullback right there, which I guess allowed price to continue selling overall. I would have just not made any trades for that day because if I'm looking at this, I'm expecting these highs to get taken at the very minimum. Even if I am bearish and looking for sales, I'm not selling in this shit because of these highs right there, right? But yeah, that is the only thing I see with this one. Um, I, like I said before, you kind of want to be a little bit more, you know, precise with your supply zones because this is not your supply. What you have right there, that's not your supply. It would at least need to include the overall high of this pullback move that occurred right there. So at the very minimum, you would have this entire range as your supply, right? But you would not have just this candle right there because that's not a significant. That candle has no significance in structure. It's just a down candle, right? But this is, you know, right. So that would be your supply there. And actually, we can go check the M5 and see what happened there. Okay. So it looks like we just kept using this, we used this supply zone to continue selling, which is fine. I mean, price will do that shit, right? So if anything, I would have waited for more confirmation. But with this, I would have probably not made any trades because unless I took something off of this after the reaction. So I would have had to find an entry like somewhere in here on M1. Let's go to M1. And I will explain why. But because we were failing to close below lows, right? We were failing, so that means we had weak highs, and then on top of having, you know, trend line liquidity or relatively equal highs or whatever you may call it, right? So it was just failing, right? But I would have had to wait until I got a reaction on my M5 supply that was created after selling off away from these highs up here. So I'm like, okay, now I got a little bit more confirmation, right? We on M1, we actually had a internal breaker structure here, so that gave me a strong high to sell from, right? So it means I had a strong high, and this is your M5 supply zone. So this kind of helps you like look at the multi-time frame analysis aspect as well, right? So um, right, and then you can see how price made a high, a low, and a high, right? So that means that breaking this low is a very aggressive change of character, and this would be your point of entry right there, right? So you would have taken sales from here, but it's very high risk because it's very aggressive change of character, right? So you would have taken. So for this something like this, I would have waited for EM8, which would have been right here. So you can see how price made this aggressive bullish candle, right? And then you can see how we closed below this candle, and then so that means that your entry could have been here, but you can see how those highs were swept. But with how tight this area is, you would just go ahead and open it up to the overall high in that area. So you would take your entry, let's say price close below that candle, right? So then you would take your entry on the very next candle. If you say, and then you'll just target whatever you wanted to target below or whatnot. One for five, one for six, or just the most recent low would have put a good amount of change in your pocket, right? So it just depends. That's where your confirmation for the entry came in after coming back into your M5 supply. But you can see how on M5 this was a weak high. But if you're looking for your entry on M1, fuck me. But if you're looking for your entry on M1, and I don't know why I just didn't bar replay this shit. But yeah, if you're looking for your entry, that's how you would have found it on M1 after coming back into your M5 supply, which was, but it was still failing. So it's still, this is a strong high or protected because of this internal break. But overall, since we failed to close below this low, um, right there, right, I would have been looking to take buys after this failure. So I would have been targeting this high at the very minimum. But overall, I want this liquidity I would have been targeting overall, right? But it just depends because so like that's why you could be right and you could be wrong, based off what you see, and price could do something different than what it should have done based off your expectations of the concepts and shit like that. But yeah, that's everything that I see that you had on your charts. But you didn't really put too much on there, so not a whole lot. But yeah, but yeah. Hopefully that's helpful.